since we have a small group, can I go around real quick and get a feel for who's in the group? Yep. Do you mind starting us up?
Chris Baker. I wrote and published my novel Escape from the Village. I'm working on some other projects right now.
Okay. And Amanda?
Amanda. I'm a designer. I do book covers, among other things, and I'm also a book blogger.
Oh, cool.
Anna Kessel. I write historical and contemporary mysteries, and I have 5 out, and I'm just on a roll, rocking the indie publishing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys totally blew me away. I've been trying all year to write a blog post. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have it out by the end of quarter 2.
Vidya Kapula Krishna. I write fantasy and I edit very, very, very slowly.
So when I finally write mine, I'll give it to you, and then we can get it out by Q3. Okay.
Yeah.
That's true. I'm writing a book and hope to self-publish it and publish it.
Cool. Edited a what?
Inspirational memoir.
Oh, wow. What?
It's my testimony of my last 16 years of how I screwed up and how I came back and got it.
That is awesome. Yeah, that sounds really cool. And everybody probably knows who you are, but just...
Yeah. So my name is Matt Herron, and I published my first science fiction novel in the fall and a nonfiction book in January this year. So working on the next one.
Cool. So for those of you guys that may not know very much about me, my name is still Emily Leach. But in the last 16 months, I've done a few things. About 4.5 years ago, going on 5, life kind of fell apart. Happens to people, I understand. It was my turn. And that took me about 2 or 3 years of just letting it all go to see what was left when you got to the bottom of the bucket. And when I started to swim out of my bucket, I found that I really, really enjoyed meeting other freelancers. I've been a freelancer pretty much since 1992. It wasn't a conscious decision. We didn't really have the word freelancer yet. I mean, I'm sure it was out there, but we didn't call ourselves that. I was a rather naive 22-year-old with a child. And one Tuesday morning, I woke up living in Houston and decided I wanted to live in Albuquerque. Not because I knew anything about it, because I thought the name was really cool. And so Saturday I lived in Albuquerque. And when I got there, I realized I didn't have a job. I hadn't really thought that through. So I was really naive, 22-year-old. So I picked up the Yellow Pages, started going through it and calling engineering firms. I was in engineering at the time, and found me a job. Actually, it was a gig. And that's where I started freelancing. So that's why I say I kind of stumbled into it. And I really loved the fact that they couldn't really tell me what to do. They could ask me what to do, and I could choose either way. So it fit my personality really well. And so anyway, about 16 months ago, I kind of decided that was my calling. I wanted to help freelancers. There's a lot of freelancers that just aren't making it. And a lot of people wanting to hire freelancers and getting super frustrated because they disappear, they flake. We have a whole list of issues with freelancers. And freelancers get frustrated because the people they work with are flakes, they have the same list, actually. And I didn't really have that experience. And so I began diving into why. What was this? I don't think I flaked on someone, but I guess it is possible. And so I started a group on Facebook called Austin Freelance Gigs. So if any of you guys are freelancers or looking for a freelancer, you can go to Facebook, find the group Austin Freelance Gigs, and post. Maybe you're looking for an editor, maybe, something that you don't do as a writer. And then the community will help you find a freelancer. And the thing I loved about that is, to some degree, there's just an innate and a natural, what's the word? Sorry, this is why I don't write. Kind of this natural community vibe of
synergy,
helping people find their gigs and then kind of holding them accountable if we know anything about the gig. So I've even gotten some calls from people that have hired freelancers and said, hey, this has happened. So I've called a freelancer and I've tried to figure it out to some degree. It's only happened 3 or 4 times in almost 2 years, so I think that's actually pretty good. That migrated into starting a conference for freelancers, and that migrated into starting an association for freelancers. So I'm pretty deep at this point in understanding freelancers. And when Matt and I met, 3 or 4 months ago, when John was here, we got to talking about sometimes, you guys as writers writers don't do everything, right? Just like engineers don't do everything. They hire people out. So why not talk about how you guys can possibly hire freelancers? So before I dive into my 3 or 4 things that I have on my list, do you have any specific questions that we want to get started with? Anybody? Or do you want me to just dive in?
I have one thing I'm hoping you'll touch on. Just, I think I understand it this year finally, but the 1099s of paying freelancers, the kind of the business angle of it. If you're going to touch on that at all.
As you being a freelancer, or
No,
as hiring someone?
Hiring them. Mhm.
Okay, I can real quick, actually. So basically, if you're bringing anyone on to do work, you don't have to 1099 someone. It is just one more piece of paperwork that the government likes for you to do.
You do have to do it if it's over $600.
No, you don't.
Really?
$600 is the point in which the government says we want you to 1099, but you don't get in trouble if you don't. I guess is what I'm saying. Because out of all my years of working, I can count on 2 hands how many 1099s I've actually received.
Oh, okay.
And so that's why it's like
I see.
it's not illegal
So
to
I can
not
just pay
do it.
consultants. I can declare what I pay consultants on Schedule C under
Right.
that line
It's-
rather than 1099 them.
It's really just a tracking mechanism.
Right.
And it helps you and it helps them, and you turn it into the government so then the government can track it. But because it's not strictly enforced,
Oh,
it's kind of a wash.
okay.
That's
It's
fascinating.
That
it's
is
your
fascinating.
it's the
Yeah.
freelancer's responsibility to keep track of their income, regardless of getting a 1099, and it's your responsibility as the person hiring freelancers to keep track of your expenses.
Well, yeah, and keeping careful track of it's important for me to get my taxes right because I don't want to get audited, right? And I sometimes
Right.
have some big losses, or I have had. So anyway, I'm just, this year there's a timing issue. You got to get it all done by the end of January if you're going to do it, and realizing that it's not
Yeah.
necessarily necessary, tracking my expenses. I mean, it's important for me to count all my expenses. That's how it
Right.
comes off
So
of my
it-
income, right?
if
Yeah.
you're the personality that likes to cross all your T's and dot all your I's,
Yeah, I don't think that's really a personality issue. It's a small business management issue, isn't it?
no, for some people it is a personality thing. I like to have all my T's crossed and my I's dotted, and so I do my 1099s.
Oh, I see. The 1099
Right.
is a personality issue, but
Right.
declaring expenses is
That's just a
part of your
business
business,
thing.
right? I see, but there's 2 ways to do it. Okay, thank
Right.
you. I didn't mean
Do you
to
have a
take too
question?
much time
Well,
on that.
I was just going to say, I think we need to check that out because my son did 1099 and didn't report it, and the IRS garnished his wages because he wasn't there.
No, that's because he didn't report the income. What I'm saying is if I hire a freelancer and I pay them $700, I'm supposed to give them a 1099. Even if I don't give them a 1099, they're still responsible
Yeah.
for turning in the income. So
I get
that's
it.
the other side of
Okay.
the thing.
Yeah. There's a place on Schedule C where you can enter how much you spent on consultants, and if you want to, they even give you a little box where you can break that out, which is handy for me because I like to know, cover art, editing, blah blah. And so that is all
Yeah.
I need to do.
It'd be also great if you could cover. So you mentioned Austin Freelance Gigs, right? Which is a place where like writers and other people can find editors,
Right.
designers, or web developers, etc. I was just wondering if you could go over the rest of the places you could find these people, because there are
Yeah,
a
but
lot of
it's-
outlets, and
It's
some
down
of
at
them
the bottom of
are.
the list.
Okay, cool.
Oh, good. Okay,
So yes, we will get into resources is what I call them for helping find them.
great.
Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is how to pick one. And this is where, the list of issues that the people hiring freelancers and the freelancers themselves come into play is because a lot of people are pretty loosey-goosey about picking one, about their criteria. They say, I just need a book cover done. And they find, oh, you're a graphic designer, I need a graphic done for my book cover, instead of making sure you hire a graphic designer that has experience in creating book covers and understands the psychology and the buying piece of what needs to be in book cover.
And also the style.
The style, since I'm obviously not that person, don't hire me to do it. But all the pieces in place, right? And what you need from them in order to get that done. And what is your timeline? A lot of times people don't talk about what their timeline is. I need a book cover whenever you can get to it. And then they get upset because 6 weeks from now, I don't have a book cover. Well, did you tell them when you needed a book cover? because they're human. Granted, the freelancer maybe should have come up and said, what's my timeline, and set that up. But that's the conversation with the freelancer. And so I'm telling you, that's what you guys need to do. So make a list of what your criteria is. And the second piece of that is make sure you understand what their credibility is. How are you going to make sure that they are a credible graphic designer? That they are a credible editor, writer, again, whatever those pieces are that you're trying to hire out. A couple of notes that I would put on that is what associations, what are they members of that helps hold them accountable? One of the things that we're looking forward to with the Texas Freelance Association is beginning to build some of this accountability for freelancers. So right now there isn't anything like that in place. And I can give you, if you came straight to me and then I matched you up with Amanda to do a book cover, I know Amanda, and I would begin to get to know you. And so if anything happened in that transaction, I could help hold Amanda accountable or vice versa because I know both of you. But I can't do that for all of them, right? So what are some mechanisms that we can have in place? And one of the mechanisms that you can put in place, we'll just jump right into the agreement or the contract. So if you're hiring someone to do work for you and you're not making sure that you have an agreement in place, you get what you get. So what needs to be in that agreement? First, you need to have some of the legalese. I am this, you are that, you're a contractor, I'm not responsible for your taxes. Make sure all that stuff is in there. And things like timelines, things like boundaries. How does the freelancer, or how do you understand what the boundaries of the agreement are if you don't put them in there? So for instance, since I've done so many years of website design, I'm going to talk in that space because I understand it a lot better. So in website design, we set some boundaries. So maybe how many pages it is, or how many graphics are going to be in, or how much copy is going to be created, if the copy is coming off an existing site or creating new copy. And if I don't have those boundaries and the client comes back and says, oh, I want to add 4 new pages, I have to add 4 more new pages because I just told them I was going to do a website and I didn't give any boundaries as to what that was going to include. That way I get the opportunity to say, hey, we're out of scope. This is going to cost more money. And you have the way of saying, no, we're not out of scope. Here's the boundary. You said you were going to do this. I get a complete book cover. We get to use 4 colors or however that. I'm sure I'm not talking in a very good, since I don't do book covers. Maybe Amanda should come up here and talk about doing book covers. But let me see what else should be in the other things that need to be in your contract for sure are how much is it going to cost? How much are you paying up front, if anything? When is the second round due? When is the third round, or however many rounds you guys are doing? How many design or edits are, depending again what you're hiring your freelancer to do. And some of this, you're probably sitting there going, yeah, this isn't nothing new. I know to do this. Then nobody does it. If everybody knew to do it, I wouldn't have to stand up here and say it because I wouldn't hear it almost every week. So that's why I'm reiterating that it sounds simple, and it doesn't have to be called a contract. I call mine agreements. One, because maybe I just don't like attorneys. I don't know. But it's an agreement between me and you, and it's something that if I really, really have to go after you with, I have something that you said that you would pay me this, I would do that, and we're going to do it within this timeline, and you're going to pay, you're going to pay on these times, and I'm going to get it done when I said I was going to get it done. And here's how to get a hold of me. The other reasons to me why credibility is super important is if the freelancer is going to be a flake, good flakes, to be perfectly honest, still know how to create credibility, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that there's more than one way around getting to that person. So check all your freelancers. Make sure that let's just make sure they're a part of an association. Because if they're going to pay money, the association can get a hold of them. Make sure you get at least a couple of references that they've actually worked with. Maybe even a friend, if you can get them to give you that. Something that says, hey, I can get a hold of you again if something happens, if I have to use one of these outside resources. Freelancers are human beings. Shit happens. And sometimes they handle it in a very adult way with lots of emotional integrity. And sometimes it just hits the fan harder than they expected. And you have to take a little bit more initiative. And I hate saying that, but it is the truth in the world of freelancing. It is not as big as most people make it out to be. What I have found is most of the people that have issues with freelancers being, disappearing or something like that, it is because they did no check on credibility. They set up no agreement. They really didn't have anything more than a 10-minute conversation on the phone, fell in love with them because they were happy and awesome, and said, here's my $500, please make me, or whatever the dollar amount, please make me the most amazing edited book I've ever had in my life. And then they walk away and they sit down and they don't have check-ins. They don't have any way of communicating. And then 4 weeks later they go, why don't I have what I said what happened? And the lack of communication just kind of causes problems as well. So what did we just learn?
How to find a freelancer and how to be careful about protecting their credibility.
Yeah, go in and just really diving in.
Mm-hmm.
Go check them out on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's kind of a pain in the neck. So if they have a LinkedIn account, it's a pretty good chance, how many connections do they have on LinkedIn? Mm-hmm. Have they taken the time to make connections? And do they do, do they have recommendations? Do they, do a little bit of due diligence? I'm not asking you to take days or hours even, but even if you spend a half an hour, maybe an hour of your time, isn't it worth a half hour to an hour to check it out? Yeah.
I found my editor Googling around, but I found her and chose her because she had a lot of good positive references at Goodreads for doing editing of historical fiction. And so that just seemed like a good credibility to me. And then when I got in touch with her, she was so on top of stuff, and she said, let me send you a sample of my contract. And I'm like, oh, you know what you're doing. And at the time I was just getting started, so her professionalism was very helpful to me.
Yeah. Cool. Yes.
A few things I learned too is occasionally I'll bump into somebody who, I'll just do it for you as a favor. Just walk away from those people because they're not going to do anything. And the other thing I've noticed too, and not just with my other people, I've noticed you won't return my phone calls, but I see you're screwing around on Facebook. And I've had that with, I've felt that way with several of the people I've worked with in various capacities, where I will send them a text message or call them, and I don't hear back from them, but then I see them posting something on Facebook, and it's like, okay, what are your priorities here? Yeah, it's...
Well, I guess I have my biases towards that, because just because I'm on Facebook doesn't
mean you're actually on
anything.
it.
It doesn't even mean that I'm on it. It can mean a lot of things.
But I see them uploading stuff. I see them posting pictures, and I see them doing all this other stuff. It's like, okay, you're communicating with social media, but you're not returning the phone call I sent you. I don't know. That seemed to get me sometimes.
Well, I definitely agree. I think that for the most part, freelancers or people in general that say, hey, let me do it as a favor, have great intentions. And then they get home and they realize that there's other stuff going on and it isn't a priority. They're not getting paid for it. And so, yes, that's almost always a bad idea because this is your business that you need to protect. And I personally do not believe that, for the most part, freelancers have ill intentions when they get into issues, when they get into a project. Issues come up, and because they're human, they may or may not know how to handle those issues real well. So, and one of my goals in life is to help freelancers understand that even though we are a business, we are a business. We aren't just a human being. We are a business. And a lot of times they just think, oh, well, I'm a person, And even though I paid my $300 to the state or whatever to be an LLC, they separate those out, and they need to realize that they're one and the same.
And that the blowing a client off has ramifications for the client's business, right? If you can't get in touch with your cover designer, you can't do any publicity without a cover, right? Or you can't do all the kinds that you want to do without a cover. It's important, and so if you're expecting it on a certain date, maybe you paid for a promotion or something like that, and that's going to go down the pipe if you want to take the cover. So if things come up and life happens, absolutely, that's all true. But I don't want to hire the people who haven't yet learned that what they need to do is get in touch with their clients who are currently active and say, I'm delayed, and this is how much time I'm going to be delayed, and so just so you know, and you can react accordingly. Yeah.
So another great question to ask is, how do you handle delays?
There you go.
How do you communicate? How do you like to communicate? Now, a lot of times a freelancer will ask you how you like to communicate, and whether they have or haven't, I think that you should ask them how they like to communicate. Like, I like to communicate on email, because then I have something I can go back to, because I have a lot of stuff going on in my world, and I may get something you said mixed up with something that another client said, and then now I think it's your thing, and it's not. And here I am trying to defend that, but it's not in writing. So I like everything to be in writing. What I will even do, and you may ask this of your freelancer, is if we have a phone meeting, I will write the notes to that meeting and send them to you in email, so that I have the email saved into your folder. Because again, I like everything to be written out so that we both were on the same page all the time. The best way to find a freelancer, to be honest, is to reach out to any existing freelancers that you know or are working with and ask them for referrals, because they won't refer someone that they're not comfortable with. And that's where I love that Austin Freelance Gigs, is because if you put something on there and I put somebody down, I tag somebody that I think should connect with you, I'm not going to tag somebody that I don't know. And very rarely does a project get put on there or a gig get put on there that someone in the community, if not 2 or 3 of us, tag a person or 2 each. So it's a great resource. It's turned out to be better than I imagined. And if you don't need them to be local, we have a freelance gigs group in Dallas and in Houston. So if you wanted an even bigger group to pull from, you might go and look at that as well.
That's great.
Red flags. What would you guys consider to be a red flag? Right up front.
Missed deadlines?
Even before you get that far, though.
Oh, you mean like in the hiring process?
Yeah, when you're in the picking process.
Sure.
Yes.
I think they try too hard to sell.
That can be a red flag.
Too much selling. That, oh, you are just so good. I gotta have you. And without their samples and whatever. I just said that the harder they push, the more red flags come.
I could see that.
Or if they don't have samples.
And then I was going to say the mere lack of samples. Yes.
So right up front, one thing, if you're looking at an editor, what if their website is badly written? That would be really embarrassing. But it can happen.
It can happen.
That would be a big red flag.
I did search engine optimization for 13 years, and my site totally sucked. I mean, completely sucked. But I got all of my leads from public speaking and stuff like that. So it's like, don't look at my site.
No, but
look
that's
at
not what you were
site.
selling. You weren't
Right.
selling website design at that time, right? And so your ugly website wouldn't matter. But it's like if you're trying to get people to hire you as an editor and you have bad editing.
Well,
or
editing is even
a cover editor, a cover designer with no images on their site. I mean, how are you gonna? Why would you?
the portfolio is just huge.
Yeah.
And I understand for a lot of editors it's difficult for them to do a portfolio, but they've got to be able to have something, whether they write their own stuff, right, so that they can create. So
The image on their site, and then I would say, they're going to tell you something about their editing philosophy, like are they Oxford comma people or whatever. They're going to say something, I think, that would help you to evaluate that fitness for you as is it going to be a good fit?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff have they done?
Well, I love the Goodreads thing that you brought up. Especially for where, since all you guys are authors, that sounds like a great space to go to.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that there are a lot of people actually looked in there recently for that. But,
So let me ask you, for this particular group, if you found a freelancer that you thought you might be interested in and they weren't on Goodreads, would that be a red flag?
Oh, no.
No? Okay,
not at all.
just curious.
Goodreads is a weird environment.
Yeah, it is weird.
To me, if they refuse to do a sample,
What do you mean do a sample for
Like
you?
a sample edit.
a sample edit.
So it's customary for editors in fiction to do a free sample edit of like 1,000 words.
Oh, really?
I've heard of editors that I
So
thought were
many
good
of
who
them,
don't do that.
I had 40 people do samples for me over
Oh my God.
5 nights. And, and I said, I need someone to respect my voice because it's story. And they
Well, yeah.
completely rewrote my thing. I'm like, you don't get it. So I'm not going to hire someone, I'm not going to pay them $20 for a sample, which they're just going to rewrite it just because they think it should be written that way. Because for me, I'm like, if I go to an interview someplace, I'm not going to ask them to pay me to do a test or a sample. So I got my hands slapped because I was on Freelance Conference and I asked them for samples and they said, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, they're all doing it for me except the two that ratted on me. But the thing is that a lot of them didn't have the qualifications and they didn't know how to edit and they just would put in words that they would use.
Yeah.
Were not my voice, So I mean, it started out with me crying out to God, and it's in quotes. And just about all of them rewrote my words to God. I'm like, seriously? It's very personal. I'm sorry, but you can't just. So things like that just were red flags to me that they didn't get it. But had they not done a sample, I would have just. I can't afford to pay everyone. But anyway, that's cool.
Okay, and since it's customary, I mean, in my field, if someone asked me to do that in website design, I tell you to go take a leap. So that's why it caught me off guard.
Exactly. I've heard very good editors say that exact thing. And I get it. They don't want to. It costs them time and effort. It's their job to give you a sample edit. On the other hand, editing is really delicate.
Right? Yeah, I get it.
Who couldn't spell y'all? I mean, come on. What is that about? I specifically asked for someone who would not edit my Texas dialect in dialogue, and here she's replacing the y'alls with a Y. I don't know what she did. YA apostrophe L. I don't know. But it's delicate, right? And so
the New England way of spelling y'all.
That's, I think, the hardest thing for indie authors is the editing. I really do. My personal feeling is that's where it's getting to be. It's hard to find the right editor.
Some editors will charge for samples, but most of them are free.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. See, I learned something.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, maybe also, I guess if they don't provide samples, I don't know if they at least have references that you can read some of the other work that they've edited. It's not quite the same, but...
Hell, that would be very
But you could at least ask, if they gave some references, you could say, hey, do you feel like they really stuck to your,
I mean, or especially with book writing, if you think of a book that's a similar book and see who edited it or something like that, or see if they've edited anything that's similar to what you're writing. So
it comes back to the portfolio thing.
Yeah.
If they have a portfolio of work, then there's a level of trust there, right? Yeah. Not only that you do good work, but that you finish the work you do, and that people are okay with you using it in your portfolio. That builds some trust.
And what kind of changes? I mean, I wouldn't object to somebody taking a couple of my pages, my editor for my historical stuff, posting it and saying, this is what I suggested to be changed, and so that people could look and see, these are the kind of changes that I make. So you could, you could take 2 pages from former clients and didn't mind that. That's what you were talking about. And that tells you a lot about what they do, like if they can spell y'all or...
I mean, at least it wouldn't be them spending extra time on a sample, I guess, if they're refusing to do that. But there should be something there to show what they can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, like
some sense of their style.
Yeah, well, I spent a fair amount of time in internet marketing, and so we would hire people to do our writing because most internet marketers aren't writers innately, especially those of us that came from engineering. I can write you a great white paper, put you to sleep in no time flat. But if it needs any personality, I'm not your chick, right? And so, but we would always have to pay the writers to give us a sample. So again, that's why it caught me off guard. But that doesn't mean it's not your industry. It's definitely not my industry, so I wasn't aware of that.
There's some considerable variation at that particular point.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Which is why it's good to ask them, what's your process, and to put an agreement in place, right? To bring it full circle.
Absolutely.
And to not be offended if somebody asks you.
Right.
You can just say no.
Yeah, and I've been working more and more with freelancers to create case studies with their portfolio, because I believe it adds so much more to the case study. Here's what the project was. Here's what the issue was. Here's what we did to fix it or to work through it. And here's the products that we used, which may not be nearly as needed in this particular industry, but like graphic design and web design, people like to know if it's WordPress or, if you use Photoshop and things like that. And then what was the end result? And that gives you a lot more about their flow. What happened, how they took an issue and walked through that process.
Yeah.
So I just think that's huge for portfolios.
Yeah.
Takes them another step.
So it sounds like a portfolio of some editing samples would actually be just fine. And if they did a little range, of genres and nonfiction, fiction kind of thing, then that's work they already did. All they need to do is get permission from that writer.
Right.
And so it's not more work for them, but the writer still has a clue about how heavy-handed they are with, for example, voice. Because
if they could do it before and after,
did
that
they
could be really
flatten this
useful.
person's voice and stamp it into the mud, or did they actually just correct, things that were actually wrong? Is the way any writer would phrase that, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's delicate.
Yeah, I'm getting that.
Yeah.
So what else would you guys think would be a red flag that you want to look out for? Maybe how many years they've been doing it?
Yeah.
Depending on the level of what you want done.
Yeah.
If it's maybe an ebook, something that's relatively quick and simple, maybe you could go after a lower level editor and it would be okay that they only had 1 or 2 years. I don't know, but based on what the outcome needs to be, that may need to be a criteria that you put in there. I want X amount of years of experience in this genre. Is that the right word? Did you have a question?
Just non-responsive. I mean, how many times do you call? You don't hear back from them. You leave a voicemail. And so many people nowadays too don't even set their voice. You get one of those generics. Yes, the number you've dialed is not answering. You don't even know if you have the right number. It's prompt responses are usually something I definitely look for, or lack thereof.
I can see that.
I've had some that they agreed to everything when I was not freelancing guru, and I said that NDA is a must. And over the phone they'd say yes, but then they block and say no, I'm not going to do it. So I'm like, then
Yeah. That's a great red flag. Yeah.
If they won't sign an agreement.
Oh.
Because they say, well, I work with all the major publishers. Like, I don't care. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Well, and not to mention, there's probably a lot of gray line in order to say that I've worked with all the publishers.
Yeah, right. I was fired by every publisher in New York.
That's fired by every single one of them.
Yeah, and in short order, but I worked for them, by God, for a whole
Exactly. Now I can say that. And I agree. Responsiveness is a big one. You say you're going to call me at a certain time. If you can't, let me know that you can't and why. The way that they communicate, for me, is huge.
The way they communicate. One of the things I loved about Jenny when I first got in touch with her, I got the sense that she was shaking out a calendar and looking at it right there. When we first communicated, I really liked the way she manages her calendar. And it actually helps me to structure my program, my work schedule, to recognize that she's got a schedule that I've got to fit into, and so I just that's a green flag. I don't know how to call that a red. How do you know that there's what's the red flag issue part of it? But a plus when you get in touch with one and you can get the sense that they really are managing their calendar well on that first communication. That's a huge plus. So I don't know how to put that more succinctly.
Well, let's talk about the first communication that is awesome. Mm-hmm. Write those notes down. I'm a huge fan of these little 4x6 note cards. So write down your 2 or 3 things that you loved. Maybe on the back, write down the yellow or red flags that you might have seen. If you have any red flags, just throw the card away. But if you have any yellow flags, it may just be that the person was off that day, something had happened. So I usually give them a little bit of leeway on what I call yellow flags. Like maybe they called me back, but they're 5 minutes late. To me, that's a yellow flag. Could have been in traffic. Things happen, right? But on the other side, we'll call them green flags. That was a pretty good one. Those are the things that I really want a reference for. So I can ask them, what was your experience on that first? Did they have the same experience? Or was this something new that they were trying? You can begin to feel them out and make sure that the things that really meant a lot to you is the way that they operate all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's some days, I will openly admit, there's some days where I'm just on. I had a great day, I had a great bike ride that morning, maybe even closed a client, got paid for it, something really great, and that the next client potential comes along maybe that afternoon, and I'm just super excited, and so I might push a little harder than normal or something because I'm excited about it. I may even overpromise a little bit, again, because I'm kind of revved up, but it's not my normal. And so I've learned for myself to track that and pay attention to it, and kind of tone it down, or maybe not even take the call that afternoon, so I can do it in my normal space. But
for me, the important thing with that, promising more than you wanted to maybe, would be as soon as you realize that you bit off more than you can chew, to get in touch with me and say, we're going to have to back this off or stretch it out or something like that, just so that I know. Timely communication would be the most important thing, and you know, everybody has their ups
I guess
and
that's
downs.
one way to handle it. I just do it, and
you just do it and
get,
suffer.
yeah,
Take,
crap it from, yeah, I just kind
take
of piss with
responsibility
myself
for
about it.
I had one gal who agreed to a certain amount for the job, and then as we got talking, she says, "Oh, but if I go over that, then I'm going to charge you so much an hour."
Whoops.
So that was a big red flag, and I said, "I can't hire you." And she just was pretty nasty to me. But that was,
Wow.
you know, it's like you reneged on me. But so that was.
Yeah, that might be a black flag.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, especially if they didn't come forward in the very beginning and say, for this part of the project, it's $1,500 or whatever, right? And then this is the boundary, and plus after that, it's X amount.
Yeah, well, we hadn't, you know, signed anything. But she just said, "Oh, and by the way, if it goes over that, I'm going to charge you $20 an hour." I'm just like, I don't think so. So, but for me, I've done a couple of jobs that did by the hour, and they totally lied to me. So I don't want to pay by the hour or by a job, because if I pay by the hour, it gets cleaner when I fire them. So somewhere if you can address how to deal with firing and paying what they're worth. When you are on paying by the job, how do you deal with that?
Well, let me see.
And the job doesn't get done.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they did not have the qualifications, so there was no way I was going to have them finish.
Well, to be perfectly honest, them not having the qualifications is on you.
Well, they lied
Right.
about it. They lied.
But again, if you keep digging until you verify their qualifications, it's still always on the person hiring them. So that's just a bummer that happened.
Well, I had no experience.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's where that part lies. But then paying by project, I don't know that I would ever pay everything up front, unless it was super short and it was, you know, relatively inexpensive. Because what you have to look at is, if you're going to pay by project, you have to decide how much you're willing to risk up front, because they deserve to get something up front. They are working at risk completely, and so, you know, you need to balance that risk, and then make multiple check-in points, you know, to where, you know, if I don't know how long it takes to edit a book, so I'm just going to make up numbers. Let's just say it takes 2 months to edit a book. It's probably way under.
No,
but
it's way over.
is it okay? Well, let's just go with 2 months, just because. So let's just say over the period of 2 months, we're going to have 4 payouts. Maybe even 5. We're going to do one in the beginning. Maybe I give you 20% of total. And then 2 weeks later, we're going to check in, and you're going to have this much done. And it probably needs to be 20% of the book. And if they don't, well, then you can make adjustments at that point. And if they do, pay them the next 20%, you know, whatever you agree upon. And so that you can manage your risk, mitigate your risk, and also keep them on time. Because, again, freelancers are humans, right? Most humans are managing or are operating off of, you know, what they get paid, and so they're more likely to get it done. Even in website design, it's very typical in website design to pay 50% up front, and it's what I charge too. But if I was on the other side, I don't think I'd pay it, because that would be more than I would want to risk.
Website is big, so it's a lot bigger than a book cover, or, you know, I think editing a novel.
Right.
What you just described sounds exactly like hiring someone to remodel your kitchen or something. It's like hiring any other kind of contractor. You set up a schedule of payments, and you pay at regular intervals.
Right.
You do inspections, and you pay after
Right.
the inspection. I mean, that's actually just kind of the nature of freelance work in general, right? Contractor work.
Yeah. And I charge out a lot of my
Makes
stuff
sense.
by project, because for me, it is if I do it faster, yay me. If I do it slower, yay you. You know, you get to mitigate your losses. Now, going and having that same conversation and paying hourly, I'd probably do the same thing. I'm gonna reserve 20 hours, let's just say, worth of hourly, and at 20%, assuming it's done, I'll pay that invoice, and then I'll pay the next invoice. And if that doesn't get done, then you don't pay anything. As far as paying what they're worth, that's a harder question to answer, because I think it's so project specific and person specific. And in the case like what you found out, that they didn't actually have the qualifications, I would probably actually just say, you lied to me, you didn't have the qualifications, I'm paying zip. I'm sorry that you're out some time, but I'm out the same amount of time.
Yeah, you are. And furthermore, I'm going to slander your name all over the place.
So I had no clue. I got totally burned. Totally.
And a lot of people do, and that's kind of why I'm standing up here trying to make a stand for, not just for you guys, but on the other side, and trying to teach freelancers that you're running a business.
Because I'm sure freelancers get burned by clients all the time.
Freelancers get burned by clients. That's why I'm saying
Which
it's
is why
funny.
The payment schedule makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
If you're paying in installments, then there's a stopping point, like a pause point, when you're mitigating the risk as you go, as opposed to putting it all on one person, right?
And you line those up with milestones, right? So if you're paying for 20% of the project, 20% of the project needs to be done.
Right.
So for a long time in web design, I did mine 30, 30, 30. So we paid 30%, and then we did 30%, then we did the final, right? 40%. Because that's really where the brunt was at the end, and it's usually the most painful. And I didn't feel like I was out that, So from the freelancer's point of view, we have to decide, how much am I risking?
Yeah.
I'm risking 30%. I'm risking 20%.
And maybe a smaller project, like 50% up front would be fine, right? If it's a small project, then 50-50 could be a good split, right?
Right.
But if it's a multi-month project, then you need to rethink how you're going to do it, because from the freelancer's perspective, they have to deal with the cash flow situation, right?
Right.
Exactly.
So, and same from the manager's perspective.
Yeah, cash flow going that way.
Yeah,
versus
just
this
like
way.
a different way, right?
So, and a great way to manage a lot of this as far as cash flow and giving the freelancer the feel of the money is there. That's what we're afraid of, right?
Yeah.
That you're taking on, that you're agreeing to this huge project, and you don't really have the thousands of dollars or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Be willing to put that in escrow.
Oh, yeah.
And use an escrow service.
That's what you do with the building trades in a lot of times. I rehabbed my house 2 years ago, so that kind of leaps to mind as a lot of experience there. And
there's two or three that's come on the market that are specifically for freelancers, allowing freelancers to require the client to put it into escrow. And then at whatever those milestones are, both parties have to say, yes, it was done, and then that percentage gets let go. Because we just want to make sure the money's there.
Website design can be quite a large and expensive thing, I think.
It can be. Yeah. And, so can writing a book and editing, a lot of stuff
can be pretty pricey. I haven't seen covers that go for more than, I don't know, I'm paid $250 for mine, so that's not a huge amount of money. It's not nothing, but it's
right.
The two payments seems to be fair enough so it has something to do with scale as well.
And
then I asked this cover designer to make some bookmarks for me, and she just did it and then sent me the invoice, and it was $50. So we didn't.
But
we had
by
worked
that
together
point too,
before.
like this is the other thing about it, right? You build a relationship.
You create a relationship, and so she knows what your tolerance is, probably, right? What your thresholds are.
You get used to each other,
and also
you know
that
how
you
you
pay bills on
communicate.
time, right? Which is important to a freelancer.
Yeah, exactly.
And she would know that, hey, if this is going to cost her $100 or whatever the numbers, she would know to say, hey, I can make these, but it's probably going to be $100. Is that going to be okay? Whatever that number is. But she knew that $50 is obviously not going to be an issue, and you would ask for it. So
that has everything to do with experience. Like you were talking about the age of the person. I don't think age. I'm old enough to be wary of judging people by their age.
No, I meant amount of time in an industry.
Yeah, in the industry, exactly. And I think from friends of mine who have done freelance kinds of work, one of the hardest things is figuring out how to charge by the project, because until you have some experience, you don't know how long it takes you. And so they're probably going to stumble around and get screwed a lot in their early years just because they're going to underestimate in hopes of getting the job. And I want to be delicate about that, but on the other hand, I really like the experience of being able to say, how much will you charge me for this bookmark? right? And then she's like, oh, I know how much that costs me, how long it takes me.
And the other thing on the other hand of that is, yes, the freelancer either needs to know or needs to get to the point where they have an idea of how long it's going to take them to do things. And that's why I can work really well on project. I've been doing it so long, so I can do that. But on the other hand, especially if you're new at this, I think it could be huge if you have an idea of how much it should take. Now, granted, it might take this person an hour or two longer than this person, so there's a little bit of gray area there. But, and again, I'm just making numbers up. But if you know that it takes 2 months to do a book, and they're coming back and saying, well, it's going to take me 3, you can go, you really shouldn't.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long.
It's a 500-page book or whatever. You can tell I know nothing about books. But, so that behooves you.
Part of your conversation that would tell you something about their experience level. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes a freelancer will pad because they might not know how long it's going to take them to do it. Yeah. And they're just as scared usually as you guys are that I might overestimate or overquote, and I didn't mean to because I don't know.
It's tricky.
It can be tricky.
Yeah.
Tricky. I have gotten burned a few times, but
absolutely.
I just eat it. Because it's like, well,
that's part of your learning curve for a new job is that, and then writers are doing fiction entirely on spec, and our learning curve is humongous, and we make nothing. so you're not going to get a huge amount of sympathy from novelists on the learning curve front.
Quick piece of advice is if you do decide to use a newer freelancer, they may have 20 years of experience in the industry, but they're new at freelancing, then just be aware that they are learning how to charge. And understand for yourself what is your threshold in their learning curve. So if they come to you and say it's going to take 2 months, and you know it's going to take 3, you might want to have that conversation. Why is it only going to take you 2 months and takes the rest of the world 3? Something like that.
Exactly.
Because they may feel like, and they may be just jumping the gun and trying to get the business, and they may be willing to eat it on the back end. And I would just ask the question. So what if it does take you 3 months? Are you going to eat it? How are we going to manage that?
So can you talk a little bit about like saying no and when to agree to something or when to keep looking? Like how do you know?
As far as finding a freelancer and picking your freelancer?
Sure. Like if you're hiring somebody for something for the first time, how many freelancers would you look at before you agreed to one? Would you get quotes from 5 or 6? Would you go...
I would at least do 2 or 3, probably. It would depend on the source in which gave me the referral.
Oh, right, sure.
Right, if I knew the referral source and I knew that they had worked with the freelancer and had a great experience with them, I don't know if I would go after another one. And it fit in my budget and I didn't get any red flags, because just because those 2 people work good together doesn't mean that my personality is going to work well with them. So I'd still go through some due diligence to some extent. And as far as when you say no as soon as you feel like you need to say no.
But don't be afraid to say no, right?
Yeah, don't be afraid to say no. You do. You start. It's almost like dating. You get in. It's like I don't want to break their heart. I don't want to let them down. It's a business. They have especially I see this a lot with women that have single moms. And I see a lot of people struggling with, I don't want to take the work away. She's a single mom. It's like, no, she's a human being running a business.
Yeah.
And you're right. She has a child, but that's not
part of the
that's not part of the business.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, there's some child labor issue. I'm just kidding.
Right. Slaving away over a hot
It's a whole other conversation. I tried it with my son. He was having nothing.
Or no rule for you.
He was having none of it. I tried so hard to teach him to be a web designer at 13. He just had no interest.
I'm a gardener, mother.
Huh?
I said nothing.
I was like, really? It's going to be such a great skill. You're going to love it. He goes, I hate it. Okay. So I'll take a picture for you. Resources, we've actually kind of already covered, but let's just recap. Resources, to me, the best resources is to find somebody that you can trust and ask them, who would you use as a graphic designer, an editor, ghostwriter, whatever it is you're needing. What other things do you guys need for freelancers? What are the other types? Anything I'm missing?
So book cover designers, a couple different kinds of editors, like content editors or developmental editors as they may be called, copy editors, and then you can also have proofreaders.
So real quickly, what's the difference between a proofreader and an editor?
So an editor's working on like story, character, plot.
Gotcha.
Making sure it all
A
makes
developmental
sense.
editor,
Oh,
whereas
okay.
a copy editor and a proofreader are different depths of like grammar and syntax. Right. So in traditional publishing, there's 3. Some
Okay.
freelancers use 1 or 2 or maybe 3.
Okay.
So there's just a couple different kinds of editors, and then formatters. So like print book formatting, ebook
Oh,
formatting.
okay.
So somebody has to do the layout, right?
I
of
knew
the
that.
book.
Cover design.
Cover design.
And that's the digital and the print book
Uh-huh.
layout.
Yeah.
And then sometimes images to put in a book. Maybe the same
You
person
might
as your
get
cover designer or not.
You might
Right.
get a model designed, you might get a graphic designed or a logo or something. So web designers and developers, audiobook producers,
Oh, the voice, the people that read the
artists.
books.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
and sometimes if it's an audiobook company, there's going to be a producer and a narrator and a director. You know, like it depends. It's pretty in depth, but a
This
lot
is
of indie
awesome.
authors just work with narrators who do their own productions. That's pretty common. But there are also other companies. But if you hire like a professional company, you're probably in a pretty good situation. So don't worry too much about hiring freelancers, right? Because you're working with a pro.
Right.
Right.
What other?
Maybe.
Some
Yeah.
authors that are doing a lot better than I am hire assistants,
Oh, assistants.
virtual assistants.
Okay,
You
I
might
could see
hire
that.
people to do different degrees of publicity. So you might there are people.
Oh,
who
yeah,
organize
PR
blog
company.
tours.
PR person.
There's PR people.
Accountants.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
going to ask for accountants. Does anybody do that?
Yeah.
You have to track expenses and file your taxes every year. So there's another person you have to. Some people do it themselves, but I'm not that person.
I am. I love that
Use
stuff.
TurboTax. I've been doing TurboTax for so many years that it's just like half done.
I know. Well, I mean,
for me,
half of it's
right?
done when I get in there.
Yeah.
It just pulls
Once
it all
you get
in.
there, I have to learn
But-
something challenging every year, so it's always a whole day job.
I had a
But,
really terrible year with TurboTax, and I've never used them again.
Oh.
They missed that. I didn't
I had
understand the
one
form. It was
completely
confusing,
appalling
and I was
Oh, really?
experience.
$1,500 under.
Just bowled through and did it again the next year, and it wasn't
Well, I had
so
to
bad.
pay it,
Yeah.
but it took like 2 years for them to bill me and catch up, and it was just this horrible thing. So that was. I'm not going to do that
Burned,
again.
yeah.
But to answer your question, yes. I mean, especially in the freelance industry, I know it in TFA, the Texas Freelance Association alone, we've got 3 or 4 accountants that they specifically work with freelancers, independent solopreneurs, which all of you guys really are. I know you call yourself
Well, I think
authors.
that's really important
Yeah.
to get across.
Oh, no,
like,
definitely
in
we're in
this
trouble.
Right.
conversation,
Yeah.
right? Is that
Yeah.
authors are freelancers, but they're also a small business, right? So you have to run it like a business,
Right.
Who hires and manages other
I think
freelancers.
of myself as a tiny, tiny, tiny publishing house, and so I have to hire all these various different people, and
Well-
and so my great goal is to get a team basically, so that I can have people that I trust, that I can work with again and again, and all these different. I've read
Yep.
several series and all that stuff. Yeah. So lawyer, you wouldn't think of as a freelancer, right? But a lawyer might
We
be a
have some.
lawyer. Yeah. Okay.
We do have some because they don't
'Cause
have,
you might need a
they work out of their
IPR
house
lawyer.
or whatever, or they maybe work out of a co-working space and then they have their private conversations in, a closed door. But yeah, we have
Yeah.
a couple of
Okay.
freelance attorneys.
All right.
And we have one that's got
There
the
you go.
craziest, awesome personality ever. I love him to death.
That's nice.
He's actually raised in a dirt commune. Dirt house commune.
It
Anyways,
tells me a lot about how old he is. Yeah.
he's actually my age.
I was going to say his parents must be my age. So.
Well, I don't know, but
They
he
may
was,
be- yeah.
I know, super
Funny.
cool guy. And it's like, how did dirt
Weird.
hut
Dirt
commune
floor.
turn into attorney? Some
Must
reason
have a
it didn't match
kick-ass
for me.
immune system.
But yeah, he's cool. So yeah, and I was going to say a lot of freelancers consider themselves to be just itty bitty tiny accountant firms and itty bitty tiny
Yeah,
web
yeah.
design companies, and right.
Yeah,
So we're all the same
exactly.
thing.
So because they might farm out stuff too. So it's like
A lot of them do.
publishing house has all these various functions that you do to produce a book, and I do some of them myself, and I farm out, hire for the other.
Web developer is a
I
great
think of it
example, right?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
most web developers aren't writers, so they'll hire writers.
Exactly. and we're
most
not
web
graphic
developers-
designers, so we hire graphic designers.
Graphic
Yeah,
designers, right? So it depends, like,
Right.
And you're happy that we do.
Right.
Or we're not developers. We're designers.
Right.
And we're not the developer. We don't code the back end
Right.
necessarily. We might be able to hack some of it or do WordPress.
Yeah.
So absolutely. And I call those freelance agencies. So I'm a freelancer and I don't have any employees. I have a freelance VA, virtual assistant. I have a freelance developer, and I could call on them when I need them.
I like it. It's one of the things I love about this self-publishing revolution is that it is fostering this entire ecology of entrepreneurs, right? I think in a lot of ways. I just think that's wonderful part of it.
It's fabulous. I've learned that in 2015, the solopreneur, independent worker, now makes up 30% of our economy in the nation.
This country was built on a small business entrepreneurship.
Well, it was $716 billion.
Wow.
And I think indie authors would be counted among that, right?
Yeah,
they would.
You're
absolutely.
basically solopreneurs.
Yeah.
Or authorpreneurs, or whatever you want to call it. Whatever
You could
word
just say
of the moment.
entrepreneur.
It's like me, it's happening more and more just because work sucks.
Well, but they outsourced all their work anyway, so it's like, if you're going, the kind of career that I started out imagining, was supposed to have, where you work through the same big corporation for a long time, and that's your umbrella, is less and less available.
So do you see the freelance, like the solopreneur revenue, like going up over time? Like,
we do.
Look like?
Yeah. We've seen a 9% increase just last year alone.
Wow.
So to me, that was huge. I don't know I didn't go back and look at what other industries are doing and what their curves were. That'd be great to look, compare against to see. But yeah, they've, statistics have shown that based on the trajectory. Yeah, that word that we've had over the last 5 to 10 years. By the year 2020, which is only 3.5-4 years away at this point, we should have 50 to 60% of our entire workforce would be solopreneurs.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's wonderful in a way.
I think it's freaking awesome. But I mean, it allowed me to be a stay-at-home single mom. So freelancing
exactly,
is
they're
awesome.
flexible for you. They give you the flexibility to do
I love that it's allowing more couples that want to have someone staying at home as they raise children, but still need 2 incomes.
Yeah.
They can now do that. The life that I got to live with a stay-at-home mom, more kids are going to get to have that, whether it's mom or dad.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what about if this is changing? Do you see any patterns in the associations to offer some kind of retirement or backup funds or healthcare and other stuff like that?
We're working on that as we're working on that as an association right now. But unfortunately, we're going to need some changes in ACA in order to make that happen. The Affordable Care Act, because the Affordable Care Act doesn't allow any discounts. So I can't do anything more for you than Blue Cross Blue Shield can do for you as an association, right? And so it's like, we could go out and do that, but I can't give you a better deal. And that's really what people are looking for, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So until that changes, there's not a whole lot of movement we can make in that.
So if the author is a solopreneur, right? Are there other support networks that freelancers should look for or should have?
Right now, we're the first association in the country. And
Really?
yes.
That's very interesting.
And we've made it a year. Now there's Freelancers Union out of New York City. They are a 501c3 as well. Or they have a 501c3 leg. They also have a 501c6 because they lobby. But they're not an association. They were created to be an insurance company. And they created 3 insurance companies in 3 different states. And all of them closed down last year after the 1 year of ACA. Yeah, because ACA, when it came around, they had to meet so many more criteria that they couldn't make it. So they had to close those down. So
is Freelancers Union still active?
It is, but it's just you don't have to pay to be a member. It's just like an open community site.
Okay.
It's just an
So anyone can join, and there's no officialness to it. They don't offer any services or
none
support or anything like that.
They do have a health insurance network
right
across the entire United States, but again, you can get the exact same prices from if you go straight to Blue Cross Blue Shield
because the prices are standardized.
Right.
So they're just offering.
So that's kind of that's maybe 6 of one, half dozen of the other. They're standardized now, so there isn't a deal.
Right, and it may work in their favor if, again, some of the. I think regardless of who gets into, I don't want to get into a political conversation, but regardless of who gets into office, I think there's going to be changes in ACA, and I think if they are able to pull together enough people to be a part of their existing network, the way it's set, that whatever those changes are, if it allows them to pull those people in and do something different, they've at least got a network. So that's really, they're really still in the insurance game.
Right.
The health insurance, I wanted to bring up the best example, though, of course, is the Screen Actors Guild. They've got, once you get into SAG, you've got a great, I think they've done it for a long time too, a health insurance plan for actors. Of course, you have to get into SAG, but You know, and that's long been a business where you're the solopreneur and you hire all your people. And if you're, I'm not sure how this has been impacted, but yeah, but that's something, that a lot of people I do think worry about as when they are freelancing is what do you do for those catastrophic expenses? And I don't know what's going to happen after Obama's out, but I'm sure whatever the feds do, they'll just make the situation worse.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think they've learned a lot in the last 2 years, and they've learned that hey, it's not perfect, it's not awful, it's just didn't quite work as we planned, and so I think they will make modifications.
Associations can do more than offer discounts on health insurance.
Right.
You can offer information about how to sign up for health insurance, and information about how to sign up for just so you're going to attract a lot of young new people who don't really think about it. You might have a page that says, here's how to start planning for your retirement or do some money. You can just do information.
Right.
I think those are great services.
So,
I'm a big believer in professional associations. I think they're your go-to place for information that relates to your job. And it is a sign of credibility of always belong to mine. And
it definitely could be. And
it shows
like I
that
said,
you're trying to
freelancers
pay attention to how things work in your field.
Right. Freelancers don't have any bar right now.
Yeah,
and so as TFA, we're only a year old, so we're still kind of trying to find our hands a little bit.
Yeah.
And we got 125 members now, so that's pretty awesome. Getting ready to launch out into Dallas and Houston, so that'll help give us a little bit more platform. So right now we have a class called Jumpstart. Amanda's been through that, and Jumpstart is now a 3-day class, nuts to bolts, start to finish, how to run a freelance business.
Oh, how smart.
So that's pretty awesome. The next one, we don't have exact dates, but it'll be in May. And then we do have a health insurance exchange, so you don't have to go through the .gov exchange. You can use our exchange and talk to our people, which really aren't our people, but we like to call them our people. And I am doing some research on to see if we can create a healthcare co-op. But my understanding with the healthcare co-op is I think we can actually do it, but it isn't an all-inclusive. So we'll have some of those. And so anyway.
Pursuing, but it doesn't have to be the centerpiece of what you
Right. Do. And we do teach some education on retirement because I think that's really huge. And I think the whole retirement landscape is changing where it isn't that you don't have to put money away anymore. You'll still need to do that, but people are working so much longer thanks to freelancing. Because my father's been retired for 20 years and he's now a freelance, I guess you call him an oilfield supervisor. He does day rate. So if you have an oilfield, anyway. So he called me one day and he was like going, I'm a freelancer. It's like, yeah, I know. And he actually bought a ticket to my conference. It was pretty awesome.
They actually like it.
But also,
you don't retire if you like it.
A centerpiece of your thing would be, putting freelancers and people who need freelancers together. That's really
it's community is to me one of the biggest pieces that we have.
A vetting, this credibility issue that you're talking about, this portfolios that you're talking about. That sounds like a brilliant way for a freelancer. And if I were just starting out, I would want to know what is that and how do I do it, and so I could come and join this association and learn.
Right.
I think that's where these things come from. Roofers don't have to belong to the Texas Roofers Association, but you're better off hiring one who does. Because you can find them again,
Right. So let's say you hired a freelancer and you knew the freelancer was a member of TFA. If something went awry, at least you could reach out to us and we could reach out to them and possibly mediate what happened as one of our opportunities to start setting some boundaries and just some guidelines.
Accountability is a big hurdle for a freelancer, I should think, and so
it is. I think we can provide some credibility for that and bring them into a system. But
that's good.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited about where it's come. Are we done? Oh, I thought yours. Oh, misunderstood the cues on that one.
So other resources besides references from trustworthy people, your website.
Look up their website, and then of course you can go to TFA and see if they're a member. Just find a freelancer, look them up, see if they're on there, and if they're not, ask them why. That's just my 2 cents. And
how do you relate to Elance in any way? Is that similar or different, or
you know what? Elance has some bad vibes in the domestic market. Primarily because there's a lot of people on those systems. Freelancer, Elance is now Upwork, right? Upwork, where they're overseas, so they don't have the economy that we have. They can work much cheaper.
Is that what Upwork means?
Upwork used to be Elance or Odesk.
Oh,
and then they came together, I think, Odes bought Elance, I don't remember. And then last year they rebranded to be one unified company once and for all. And, you know, I've talked to those guys. They really want to change their domestic market, but it's just a struggle for them because they're like, well, you know, these people can work for that price. They just can't.
Yeah.
And it isn't their fault, and it isn't wrong. It's just what they, you know, what they can do.
Yeah.
But then it makes it difficult for the people in the domestic market to go after projects.
Yeah, the prices on those sites are just
Most of them are crazy.
yeah. They're
So
that's a good reason.
What kind of work are they doing really cheap though?
they're doing writing, they're doing website design work, they're doing development work. I mean, I have to admit, I've used one. I got into a project and it was one of those where I kind of overcommitted. I didn't quite understand, I didn't do my own due diligence. And it turned out that they needed development work. I didn't have the budget at that point to pay a domestic developer. So I went overseas and to get the job done.
Good reason.
And they did an okay job. And a lot of people, the other struggles that I've heard with some people using some of the overseas is English isn't their first language for a lot of them. And so they're struggling to communicate, for one. And you may you may be paying, $10 or $15 an hour versus $45, $65. But a lot of times you'll have to have them do it 2 or 3 times. And so you're paying 3 times the amount of hours. And so a lot of people have come back to just using domestic labor. Yeah.
For all the reasons.
And that's where the Austin Freelance Gigs has really been great, because people are like, I want someone local.
Yeah.
So I was like, and it's free to join. So that's just a kind of
They foster a local community.
it's a great community. And you get it, if you guys go and join it, it's like I said, it's free, but you do have to be accepted. And the only acceptance criteria is to live in the Austin area, so you're probably all good. But if you go in there and just kind of watch some of the conversations that the freelancers are having, that's what really blew me away by it. I just loved it. And so I created the Freelance Conference 2 years ago, and again, industry agnostic, because it doesn't matter to me what you do as a freelancer. It's the business of being a freelancer. That's my big hard hit.
Absolutely. This communication and that kind of thing, this is what raises the standards of new industry, as we've seen with the whole self-publishing thing. I think that just standards across the board have risen in the past 5 years in terms of cover design and editing, and people understanding what it takes to self-publish a book and make sure it's a good book. And there were some good ones and some whole lot of terrible ones. So that communication and those helpful groups make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. So for me, again, the number one resource
Really
is to either
Professionalization,
use a group that you know that you can trust. The AFG, the Austin Freelance Gigs, Texas Freelance Association, you can write to us. We're actually in the process of building out, and it'll probably take about a year to get it built out, a formal system where people could go in and vet people within the TFA. And we would have our own internal vetting system of some sort, where if a freelancer wanted to, they would pay some fee and go through our vetting system, and then they would be marked as vetted by TFA.
Yeah.
And you would know what that is.
Right. Yeah, you need a little logo
Again,
stick
to that
on
bar.
their website.
Trying to, so anybody can become a member, but then we would have another level of a vetted member.
Oh, that's nice.
So there are editors networks that do this as well. Like there's one called PEN, Professional Editors Network.
Okay.
So there are some, but like TFA, they're often local. So like there might be like a editors network in Colorado or something, that's more local. I don't think there's anything national, but I know they do exist. So it's cool that you're doing this for all freelancers.
Yeah.
It is, because you need, as we just listed, you need a bunch of different people depending on what you're
I
doing.
know, I really had no idea. I mean, when you
Amazing,
started saying them, they started to make sense.
Yeah,
But
and it's such a long list. I can never keep track.
I don't hire all of those different people, but if I were.
And what happens is that if a writer is good at one thing, they might do a couple different things themselves.
Right.
They don't.
You probably learn some
hire all of this
tertiary
stuff
skills.
out, right?
Yeah.
So you definitely learn some tertiary skills, but you still have to hire a core group of people to do the things you can't do or don't want to do. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like most freelancers, they don't want to do bookkeeping. That's the first thing they hire is a bookkeeper.
Really?
Don't like it, hate it. I hope to never have to open QuickBooks ever in my life. Those are the things that I hear. With,
That makes sense.
some
to
other
me.
words in there.
Or you don't necessarily
Yeah.
want to buy what I don't want to go out and spend $500 to buy Photoshop, so I hire somebody who knows Photoshop.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Also,
Yeah,
the
don't wanna buy it, and I don't wanna learn it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not just $500. It's also the next 2 years of my life to try to learn how to
Right.
just put a drop shadow in Photoshop,
Right.
which I'm sure is easy to do, but I can't
I
do
don't
it
think
my life.
so. I don't think so.
I'm sure Amanda would say, yeah, I did that this morning before breakfast.
I did actually.
2 hours.
Kind of like Alice in Wonderland. I did that 6 times before breakfast.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anything that I didn't cover that you just want to chat about? Because if you can't tell, I like to talk about freelancing.
Yeah. Good. I like to see this coming up in Austin. I really do.
Yes.
When I hired out to my format,
Mhm.
she wanted to subcontract it, and I wasn't comfortable with that because how do I? It's like I lose control over what this person's doing. So would you consider that a red flag, or would you even pursue it?
If it's not comfortable for you, it's a red flag. And it's not that she's doing anything wrong. It's just a red flag for you. But the fact that she told you, or I don't know, maybe you asked, is a really good thing for this person's integrity that she at least told you. So.
Yeah, for sure. It's not for everybody. If you'd rather work directly with the person, I think it's worth finding somebody who will work directly with them.
And it's a great question to bring up to anybody that you guys are hiring. Is ask them: are you going to do the work, or are you going to subcontract it? And then you just have to decide for yourself if you care or not. And then if they are going to subcontract it, how are you managing those subcontractors? What is your process?
Right.
And I would like to know who those subcontractors are. And you can just say that in case you disappear.
Right.
I mean, depending on what your relationship is with them. If it's the very first time you work with them, just continue to tell them, hey, we're building a relationship here. And I want to know everything that's going on behind the yellow curtain, black curtain, Oz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think that subcontracting.
Yeah, just the curtain. Okay, I don't have to have a color.
That sounds like
Behind
in
the
my
curtain.
opinion, a major red flag because you've already, it's communication is enough. Communication seems to be difficult enough. When I'm communicating with people I hire directly, now I'm introducing a middleman to make things even worse. I mean,
I don't know.
Well, again, it's for you. That's a red flag. It's not a red flag for me because you're still on the hook for getting the work done, and you're on the hook for getting the work done the way I want it done because I'm still the client. And if you want to take that on, more power to you. You had a question.
No, it's not a question. It's about this subcontracting. I'm thinking it seems to be not unusual in the beta reading domain, which is a new little industry that's springing up, where it's a very lightweight kind of. It's not exactly editing. They read your book as if they were a reader, and they comment on things that don't make sense to them or whatever. It's very cool. It's very useful. And I got 2 great beta reads from a place called Quiet House that I just found. I was really in a hurry. I needed something and found them. And she just farms it out. So it's just like readers. It can be like your grandmother, might make $50 a week just for the heck of it reading a book, right? And so you've got the central person who has her little stable of readers. Yeah. So that's a subcontracting thing, which I think works actually pretty well. And so they'll have readers who like historical fiction or readers who like science fiction or whatever. It's interesting.
And if you're on the fence, if you want them to subcontract or not, you may even just ask the question, why do you subcontract? Because they may not do any of the work themselves, or they may do the front end, subcontract the middle part, and do the end. And that may be just how they are able to take on more client work, and because they need more money per month,
And
exchange of time for
when a
money.
freelancer gets too big for themselves,
Right. At some point, you have to decide. I either raise my, you can only raise your rate so many times. You don't have any more hours you can create. You can start to create products that you can sell. That's one way to make more money. And the other is to begin to subcontract different pieces and parts and pieces. So I would probably like to know
Depends on
why.
what it is. Yeah, exactly.
What
With
part?
beta reading, it makes lots of sense. This grandmother just made $50
Really
for reading
does.
a novel. It's like she likes reading novels, and just now she just has to write down her response.
Just write an email afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Like
or what?
James
You know,
Nelson
it shows
retired
why
from
you're
contracting
going.
all these
It's just a
writing
little
to
something.
ghostwriters.
It's out to dinner money or something.
It's true.
Yeah.
But so you need somebody to
That's right.
coordinate that, and so she just knows a whole bunch of people who like these kind of books and those kind of books and farms them out. I think it's kind of neat. It's an odd little, odd jobs.
Did you find it affordable?
Yeah, I went to her and said, "This is way too cheap. You should have charged me more." Because one of them gave me an awesome critique. It was just ridiculous how useful it was. And
Wow.
I paid $25 for it. So I thought, I almost didn't hire you because I thought
I'll read
this
your
was too
books.
cheap. And so
Right.
I think they have raised
Take
the
it
rate.
back.
No, because you think for $25 it's going
I'm
to
a
be
slow
nothing,
reader.
right? And so I just actually stumbled onto one of these. But maybe, it was really the accident of a very
I just think it was
OCD personality or something. But,
They secure like $900 or something for an editor, and then you get and sometimes a really good critique does the same kind of things for you.
yeah.
It might be worth trying to critique first.
So anyway,
They're not
I'm
happy
going to
with
go
this.
back to that
Right.
person for more. I don't know if I...
Is the 25 or the 50, is that
Yeah.
standard?
No, I don't think there is a standard. I think that 25 is
It's too
insanely
new.
cheap, and that 50 is not unusual, and 100 is not unusual. More than 100 for a beta read, I would be skeptical, unless it was this woman, because I would pay her probably anything. And,
Yeah, can I give everything to her?
That much, right? Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. Well, maybe she was just having one of those days, like you said.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, when dealing with freelancers, I'm going to be putting some stuff out that's going to be under a pseudonym. What is the best way to deal with freelancers in that regard? Should I just approach them as my name or as the other person and just kind of,
That's a hard
should I tell them
question.
who I am? Should I say I'm Chris Baker, but I'm publishing this under something else? Or
Yes.
because I also want to make sure that and get them to sign some kind of non-disclosure agreement saying,
I would trust your
Yeah.
freelancer, and
Yeah.
if you're going into it without trust, you
Yeah.
would need to say no before you entered into it. Otherwise, I would tell them the whole the whole story, because you want them to tell you the whole story. So
Right.
you have
Also,
to be
you
able to
can't
go
sign a
both ways.
contract as a pen name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a problem if something
You're not
happens.
that person.
No.
So yeah, I guess you'd have to disclose that to a freelancer. But an NDA makes sense.
And
if
I would
that's
put it in the
case.
agreement. I'd make
Yeah.
sure that
Part
it
of the
was even
agreement.
documented in the agreement that this is being done under
Yeah.
pseudonym, pen name,
Well, you
whatever
need
the
to
right.
have some kind of damages involved too. If you got to put some teeth in it. I don't know what kind of damages you do with that though, but
I don't know, I'm not a
Wow,
lawyer.
depending on how serious it is.
Ori, you're offered 30. Ori.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Think
so now
about
you can
that.
put damages in it because you don't know what the seriousness is. That's what the attorney is
Well,
for.
you would have to
define.
know that. Yeah, you would have to define the seriousness and give it a dollar value, I guess.
Well, what if they go do one book under it versus 10 books under it? There's no way of setting that up in prior to.
I think he's talking about damages if the freelancer leaks the information about what the real name is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how do you even quantify
Well, even
that?
still,
Yeah.
so let's say that he's only
I know.
done one book. The damages will be different than if he had 10 books out there and then they destroy his
I
name
see
or
what
leak
you're
it,
going.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
you're right.
Right.
That's right.
that's just where an attorney
Yeah.
comes in at that point and defines what damages mean.
I'm a lawyer.
No,
Yeah, I'm not a big lawyer fan.
prefer to set things up so that damages are irrelevant.
They- Doesn't mean they're not cool people, but
no risks,
I don't really want to use your services if I don't have to.
So I want some people to beta read my book.
She knows some people.
Quiet house editing.
But do I need to have them sign an NDA and set up another agreement?
Oh no.
And how do I protect it? Do you have actually a galley that they need, or do you give me an actual manuscript?
I probably sent them a Mobi file. I think that's what they wanted. For the beta readers, they'll want that. An editor would want your Word doc, or I don't know if that's Scrivener, but yeah, non-disclosure isn't relevant. I wouldn't worry about the freelancer, the editor stealing my book.
But it's just like a beta reader. I don't.
Yeah, beta reader. It's just the same. You treat them like an editor, I think. Yeah. Uh-huh. And maybe that's why it's an advantage for all those parties to have the center person. The center person who's running the business and doing the business.
To have more than one
She
person
just
in this.
gives that woman $50 in cash for all I know, and
Right.
yeah. And
It's all under the
she's,
bush.
but she's managing.
We
a
just told the
proper
IRS
business.
that check out beta readers.
Yeah. She's, so I don't remember, I must have had some kind of contract with her because an agreement, you always do. It would be weird not to.
Right.
You wouldn't expect, I'm just sending my Mobi out into the blue if I don't have an agreement. Yeah. I think that would be a red flag. No sense of contract at all.
Yeah, for them to not acknowledge that, you have some,
We just made a commitment to one another.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else? I'm at the end of my list.
Great. This is really useful.
Cool. Thank you guys very much for inviting me up to do this. I am sorry that I had an emergency last month and I wasn't able to make it. It was actually pretty awful, but I'm glad to be here tonight. And this was a great conversation. I learned so much about writing a book and why I haven't written one.
So just say where people can find Texas Freelance Association and the Facebook group was Texas
I can do that.
Freelance.
If you want to contact me directly, you can go to emilyleach.com. Keep it simple. And if you want some information about the Texas Freelance Association, it's texasfreelance.org. It's either $6 a month or $65 a year to be a member. And we try our best to keep all of our expenses for members down to zero, unless something costs us something, and then like classes and stuff like that. Then we push those costs through. Other than that, if you have an interest in learning even more about freelancing, we do have the Freelance Conference, which is at, surprisingly, freelanceconference.com. We're looking to put that on in November of 2016 because it turns out that there's a National Freelancers Day.
Awesome.
On November 12th.
Cool.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.